Hi, and welcome back to Be Still and Know. The date is, what is the date? It's August. Wow, it's already August. I think it's August 5th, 2023. So a lot has happened in the political arena. All kinds of stuff is coming out, and we all know all of this stuff has been happening, but the normies don't know. And so seeing all this stuff unfold just confirms that we're right. We know that this stuff is really happening. Just yesterday, Trudeau and his wife are getting separated. It's like, and sometimes I watch this news and I see these people doing concerts like Taylor Swift and whatever, and you think, gosh, we're told that some of these bad guys are gone, but then we still see them doing things. And we know that they have technologies that allows that. And then we wonder, is it the white hats that are continuing this on? And I don't know, the whole Taylor Swift thing. I mean, honestly, I liked Taylor Swift. I liked her when my kids were little. Some of the songs that she did were just really great for them to hear, and then she turned really dark, and then she had that whole video about, hating Trump. And then I knew she was probably not a good person, or she was confused. And that was before I knew what was going on, and I was praying for her. But I am just really, really curious to know who is good and who is bad. I mean, there's certain people we know are good, and there's certain people that we've been told are bad. But I've always been the kind of person that isn't going to specifically say a person is bad unless I've got the receipts to show me that they're bad. And I'm talking about the entertainment industry. I've seen enough about some of the politicians, like, the guy who's in the pretendency right now, that he is definitely not a good person, and nor are the Clintons or any of those people, Obamas, all that stuff. I know that they're evil. There's been a lot of receipts and things we've seen that prove to us that they aren't, which should be a big flag for us that are awake, that know what's going on, to tell us that things are absolutely happening. None of this stuff would be coming out at all. Yesterday, I was watching a video from the woman who does Fall of the Cabal. I don't know if you've ever watched the Fall of the Cabal video series. She has been doing them for years now, and they are very, very informational. There's so much information. And the last one I just watched of her was kind of like, she was telling a story in the third person about a person. So she was talking, it's hard to explain, but she was talking about how a person noticed things in their lives, started remembering satanic abuse that they'd had, and that they then reached out to all their friends that they grew up with and realized most of them had died through suicide or whatever. And as this person, the story that she was explaining it as someone from the outside talking for this person. And this person then, of course, was vilified, and nobody wanted to hear his story or her story. I don't know if it was determined if they were a man or a woman. And she just outlined how easy it is when evil controls all levels of government and are in everything. How easy it is to shut someone down. And this person was remembering satanic abuse, and then he was then put into, and I keep saying he because that's what I imagined, he was put into evaluations, and then they thought he was paranoid schizophrenic, or I don't remember if it was even schizophrenia, but paranoid delusions. And so, and they took all his money away, destroyed him, and all he was trying to do was reach out and tell people about what happened to him. And the thing is, that is so easy to do. They've created, and I say they as in the controllers, have created a situation where if you go against the line, against what they want communicated, they just attack and attack and attack. So that's one of the things that makes me wonder about who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. I am so excited to find out who all these people are who have been hidden mean, I think we've heard like 700, at least 700 people are in protection, witness protection, people that are alive that we thought were dead. And now that goes back to Scripture. Now, I always try to go back to Scripture. You know, it talks about the dead raising from the dead and coming back to life. And I mean, that could be part of that. Who knows? And right now, I've also heard that there are earthquakes everywhere because they are clearing out the rest of the domes. And now, according to people who have sources, I have no sources. I just have what I look and research and watch and stuff. So I have no sources. This is just my intuition and what I believe is true. Because when something resonates with me and I feel that it's true, I am beginning to trust that. So from a couple of different sources, those domes are essentially emptied out and they're collapsing them now. They're collapsing the ones that they're going to collapse. Some of them are going to remain open, which makes sense because they have those underground rails that can go all the way to different countries in like minutes. I am so excited about that. Okay. Okay. I don't know why I came on today. Because it's been a long time. So I might start going on all these different topics just because it's really nice to just sit here and talk. I can't remember what my husband and I this morning were talking about. Now, like I've said before, he really doesn't believe what's going on. And I've talked to my youngest daughter even recently this summer because it's summertime and she's back from school about certain things. And I've said things like, what do you think about reincarnation? And what do you think about this? And she's like open to that, which is okay. I think a lot of younger people are open to that. And I just wanted to get a feel for how she would think about me doing that. Because, you know, it's kind of like when you start living in a new paradigm and people expect a certain thing from you, because I have been a leader at my church for so long. When you start to talk about things that they might feel is not really part of the Christian church, you wonder how that affects their, not so much their opinion of you, but what they'll listen to you about. So you got to be careful about that. You got to kind of ease into that so that they don't think you're crazy, so that they continue to still listen to you. So I am praying constantly for that type of discernment, because I really feel this is what I feel. I feel that God had me studying Scripture for these last 30 years, the way that He's had me study, and that I have to tell you, when I first decided to start studying, it was amazing how everything burst open for me, like clarity. And people talk about downloads, you know, like God downloads things, the universe downloads things. The universe is the same as God. God is the universe. God is love. He is everything. Okay, so when people say the universe, they're essentially saying God. And as a Christian or as someone who believes in Jesus and who believes in God in that paradigm, when you say universe, they just shut down. I don't think that we should, because intent is 100% of what we're talking about. Okay, so some people can't say Jesus or something because they have these blocks and they've had experiences that really do not bode well for them. It creates a different resonance in them, a negative resonance. So if they say the universe, and still the concept is that is God, that is the person who created, the entity that created all things, that's okay. Okay, we just need to understand that that is something that we can all agree on. It's just a nomenclature thing, meaning the words that we use. Well, anyway, so I was talking to her about all of that, and just kind of feeling out how she might receive some of that information. And then I started asking her a little bit about things that might be happening in the world. And she was telling me how, you know, she hasn't been going to church lately because, you know, there's been so many contradictions that she's seen, and she's kind of got a little bit of anxiety for things that had happened in high school. Not like really, really bad things, just hurtful things that happened. And which I totally get, because there's hurtful things that have happened to me at my church, and I am distancing myself and creating boundaries. I'm there because I really feel like God has got me there for a particular reason, and I think it has a lot to do with what's going to be happening and the pain and suffering that is going to happen in the next couple of years as things become a reality, the lies become understood and known. So I know I have to be there. I prayed about that a lot, and I believe that's where I need to be. But anyway, so it was nice talking to her a little bit about that. And she's like, well, you know, I totally get that, Mom, but I still don't believe what you believe about like all the governments being against everybody. And I didn't even know she knew. That's what I thought, because I had not talked to her much about that. Because as soon as they started shutting me out, I stopped talking about it. Because there was a good, I would say, 6 months that my kids wouldn't talk to me about anything. And I didn't like that at all, because we had always been so open and honest with each other about all the things that were going on in our lives. So it was very hard for me, and I prayed about it. And so I stepped back and said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to talk, what did I say? I'm going to talk about unicorns and sunflowers or whatever, because that is the only thing they can really handle. Because I know I talked about end times with my oldest, and it freaked her out. And so I get that. I totally get that. And I'm like, I'll step back. And I just told her, you know what I believe. And what I've told you has caused anxiety in you. That's fine. Okay, just understand that if you understand what I'm saying and you know that I believe this and it's upsetting you, understand it doesn't upset me. In fact, I'm very excited about it. So what I believe is an exciting thing. So don't let it make you anxious. So I don't know if that helped. I think she said it did help a little bit. And this was years ago, like when I realized that it was the end times. I first realized that. So I haven't really talked about it with her since then. And I really believe that because of that, we've gotten closer. Still, we're able to talk, so that when this stuff does happen, she will know that she can come to me. And that's so important. We cannot judge people. We can't be like, oh my gosh, nobody's listening to me, you know, and just like push it, you know, because that is not going to work. Love is the only thing that changes everything. Only love. And we have to love. And if we love, our vibration, our whole presence in a room changes. And it changes not only us, it changes the room, it changes the people in the room. That's where we need to be. So when I start to feel negative about things, I really just try to just say love, 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 love. Just saying the words is so powerful. You know, okay, I have so many things I could talk about. I was just thinking about how there's those experiments, those water experiments. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but you can look it up. There are experiments, and I can't remember the name of the dude, and I didn't look it up because I didn't know I was going to talk about this. And he did a lot of experiments where you would have jars of water or jars of ice or whatever. But what you would do is you would speak intentions into the water, like, I love you, you're beautiful, oh, I just love you, you know, all these positive affirmations. And then what would happen when the water was then frozen and crystallized, you would see these beautiful crystallized structures that were symmetrical, and they were white and bright and beautiful. But in waters and things where you would say negative things, or even just write on it on this piece of paper, and put a piece of paper saying, I hate you, I don't like you, you're ugly, all of those things, even like I said, just writing it on the piece of paper. And this is done with rice too, people putting rice in containers and doing like words, just writing the words on them. When you would take that water, or the rice, because I just threw that in there, but if you took that water and then crystallized it, it was ugly. It was like dingy looking and not symmetrical, and like it looked horrible. And this guy's been doing this for a long time, way before this awakening started. And I think a lot of that has been suppressed because I don't think they wanted us to know how important words are. And people would go, oh, that's weird, you know, that's not real science. It's like, why isn't it real science? I mean, the guy did some amazing experiments, and I'm sorry I don't know the name of him, but all you really have to look up is like water experiments using words. I'm sure that would get it for you. And maybe if I remember, I can put a link in the description here so that you can look it up. Anyway, so it just shows how powerful words are, and that words also dictate how we feel. So like when we put ourselves down, we start saying bad things about ourselves, which we all do. It really hurts our bodies. It hurts them. It can cause sicknesses and illnesses. But then when we say wonderful things about ourselves, just I love you, you're beautiful, I love you exactly the way you are, which is, it's so hard to say because so much of this world has made us look at ourselves so critically. And there's like this perfection that's impossible to get to because they've shown us such a lie. Okay? They've shown us things that are beautiful, but they're lies. And it's hard for me to explain all that without saying all the things that have been going on, like Victoria's Secret. What is Victoria's Secret? Well, Queen Victoria was a man, you know. Michelle Obama is a man. Okay, there's a lot of people that don't know this, and when they find out, it's going to be crazy. But what I'm saying about that being a lie is that men, if their bodies are transformed and they're trannies or they're pretending to be women, their bodies look different than women's bodies. Women's bodies, you know, the fat goes in different places, their tummies pop out. But when you look at a man who's pretending to be a woman, they're always like very thin and their tummies are flat because they don't have that same distribution of fat in their body. So they've created this idea of beauty that is impossible for a woman to get. And so, I mean, I think about myself. I weighed like, when my second child was born, I weighed 103 pounds. I was very, very small. And I didn't try to be that small. But I felt, at 103 pounds, I felt I had a big stomach. And then I go back and I look at these. I mean, I wore size 1s. Size 1s, these little teeny things. I'm like a size 4 now, and I'm good. I'm good with that. And I'm still small, but I still struggle with this idea of my big fat tummy. And it's because of this lie that they've told us. And so in that, there's days where I just defame my body. I just say, oh, you're so ugly. You're so awful. I hate this fat. All that does is it puts me into a place where I am hurting my body by saying these things. So I have to forcibly stop myself and just talk love all over my body. Oh, your skin is beautiful. Oh, your legs, they're great. Oh my gosh, look at that stomach. It's so strong. So that I can create in my body exactly what I want. But I have to start with my mind first because my mind is distorted what reality is. I can create that reality with my mind. And we know that. That's scientific. Totally scientific. That we control our health, everything, our bodies, the things we do, how we approach each day by first setting our minds to love and just affirmation. I mean, people put these affirmations on their window, their mirrors in their bathrooms, and they work. They work because you remind yourself, and then you tell yourself that you're beautiful, that you're wonderful, all of these wonderful things. And as I say quite often, God is in us. God is part of us. His soul, the creation of God is part of who we are. And that's what combines and unifies all of us. All of us. I've been watching a lot of videos on NDAs, which are near-death experiences. These are people that have died and then come back to life. I don't know whether you believe in that or not, but these people have had actual experiences, and they're all very similar. And one of the big things that they talk about is how when they come out of body, they realize that they're a spiritual being. And not only that, they realize that they're connected to everything, to all people, and this overwhelming love just pervades their entire being, and they feel love. They feel love for everyone, and they feel love coming to them. It's like it's part of everything. And then one of the big things I've noticed in all of these videos is that when we speak badly about ourselves or when we judge other people, we hurt ourselves because they are part of us. So all of us are connected together. So when we judge other people, we're judging ourselves. And that is biblical. Because God says that. He says, do not judge, lest you be judged. Do not judge, lest you be judged. Yes, you can look at it like, well, if you're going to be judgy, people are going to start judging you. But you can also look at it as a whole unity thing. If you judge someone else who is part of you, because we all are connected, then you're judging yourself. And that judgment then comes back to you in a negative way. And it also hurts the entire collective unity of the creation that is all one. So we don't want to do that. We are all connected to each other. We are all part of God. And Paul talks about it, right? He talks about how the hand is part of the body and the arm, all these different parts, and they all have their own things that they need to do. But it's part of the body. And if you hurt that part of the body, it hurts the whole body. It's just another analogy for the same thing. So when we talk about these existential types of topics, and then we say, oh, it's not biblical. It's like, it is. It's so biblical. We have got to step back and look at what God is trying to teach us in the Bible, not through the lens of other people, but through the lens of what he can teach us. And I was talking earlier about how when I started to study, and I know that God put me in this place to study the Bible for these last 30 years, and I have learned a lot. And so I've also lived a lot of life as a non-Christian. And so I know that aspect of things. I know the loneliness and the disconnectedness that is in that place. And I also am not afraid of seeing what else is out there. I remember I used to watch the videos of people talking this, like you see ghosts or spirits, or I've always been really drawn to that spiritual aspect and very ashamed of it because I was told that that is evil. Well, you have to be very careful because that evil is real. Satan does exist and you can pull him in through Ouija boards and all that kind of stuff. So you do have to put protections around yourself. That I've always known. You just pray for that protection. But there's why should I be ashamed of that? Because it's real. Why should I be ashamed of that? But they created this in me so that I would be afraid to search out for something beyond myself. And a lot of the things that these people say in these NDAs is that we are so much bigger in our spirit. Like when we're in these bodies, we're like confined into, it's like we're in a corset. And then once you bounce out of that body, you're so huge. You're such a part of such a big expanse, and there's so much more out there that we are part of. And the controllers didn't want us to know that. They wanted us to think we were isolated on this earth and this was it, and that's all, and there's a hopelessness in that. There's a hopelessness that we are so disconnected from everything, when the fact is we are connected to everything in the universe. And knowing that, oh my gosh, has made me I'm in such awe of God and of creation. I'm so excited. I used to not have fear of death, but I have even less fear. I thought I had no fear of death, but now I'm almost like, wow, there is no death. There is no death. We go from here to what we were before we were born. And I've talked about that, how we are a creation before we actually enter our bodies. That is biblical. You can look in the Bible, find that. This is not unbiblical. And a lot of people have trouble believing anything that might be considered esoteric because people in their churches have told them that's evil, that's evil. We have got to stop listening to other people. Okay? Other people have been deceived just like we were deceived. Okay? And if fear is controlling you in any way, shape, or form, that is not of God. It is a low vibration, and that's a thing that's made to keep you in a box so that you don't learn more about who you are. We are so much more. If this earth was all that we had, well, that would be very disappointing, don't you think? And we know that when we die, we go to heaven and everything's going to be great, right? So this can't be the beginning and the end of all things, okay? Time is relative. We know that through quantum physics, and quantum physics is becoming more and more known. You know, it seems like crazy stuff, but it's been, a lot of stuff has been proven. So our perceptions of science and things are very limited to what they wanted us to know. Free energy. Oh my gosh. That reminds me, this is what I was going to say earlier, because I'm like going off on all these tangents. I was talking to my husband, and like I then went off on this tangent and said I was also talking to my daughters about things, but I was talking to my husband just, it could have just been today. It could have been this morning. We were talking about power. Oh yeah, because we need to bury some of the cables that we have in our backyard, because our pond, we built a little pond in our backyard and it has a little waterfall to it, but for some reason it keeps, every time there's rain, it keeps tripping. So then it's not running. And so there's no aeration going on in the pond. And that's just happened like in the last week. We have a new puppy. So we think the puppy might have chewed some of the cables. I've been trying to keep them from chewing on them, but we've been kind of lazy. We were having problems with it before, so we just ran an extension cord from the pond all the way to the house. So it's this long extension cord. And so he's been chewing it because it's sitting on top of the ground. And you know, puppies, they chew anything. Well, anyway, so he was talking about my husband. Well, we just really need to bury the cables. And I said something like, no, unless, you know, free energy comes out, you know, the Tesla free energy comes out in the next couple of years, maybe we won't need to do that. And, you know, that kind of talk actually used to excite him a lot when I would talk about the free energy and whatever. But, you know, it's always this like pie in the sky thing. He doesn't really realize that it's really just around the corner. But so I just kind of threw that in our conversation. And he didn't say anything. Yeah. I don't know what he thought. But it was kind of fun to say it. I just said, yeah, well, you know, except when the Tesla free energy happens, you know, which should be happening like in the next couple of years, I hope. Oh, that's so mean. I don't know if it's mean, but it was fun. It was fun to do. Just because, I don't know. I don't know why it was fun. It was just fun. Well, anyway, there are a couple of things, and I'm going to look at my computer behind here. There are a couple of things I wanted to clarify from one of my last videos, because I said some things and I didn't have specific scripture for them. And I don't like to say things without receipts, because, you know, a lot of people can say things, and if they don't have the evidence for it, and I'm always saying that, you need to look up the evidence for it. And one of the things I was talking about, oh gosh, I hope I'm not going to have trouble finding it because it looks like I just closed everything. One of the things I had been talking about was how reincarnation was talked about in the Bible in lots of different ways, and that John the Baptist was believed to be the reincarnation of Elisha. And, you know, I just threw that out there without saying why I thought that might be the case. In Matthew 11:14, it said, "And if you are willing to accept what I say, he," John the Baptist, "is Elijah, the one the prophet said would come." There seem to be some scriptures that people will use, many Westerners, to refute this whole reincarnation thing. And that, again, is part of allowing other people to give you your opinion. They'll often use John in Luke 1:17. John will go before the Messiah in spirit and power of Elisha. Well, they conclude that in spirit and power of Elijah means that it isn't Elijah. This is probably one of the worst arguments an opponent can give. Why? Because returning on earth in a spirit and power of someone who has already lived on earth is reincarnation. There really isn't much better definition for it. It would seem that the opponents of this biblical reincarnation hadn't thought of this one, because if you're returning in spirit and power, you're still returning. Thus, that is reincarnation. A lot of these, they try to refute it. they'll also use John 1:21 through 23 as ammunition. And here, that's when the Levites asked John the Baptist point blank, "Are you Elijah?" And John responds with them by saying, "No, I'm not." Well, when we come back in reincarnation, we don't necessarily know who we were before. We have this forgetting when we come. So maybe John the Baptist didn't realize he was actually Elijah. I mean, maybe he never connected those things together. But another scripture that people will use to refute reincarnation, and I mentioned it in my last video, and I glossed over it. I didn't go back and tell you what the scripture was. I read it. I said it was Hebrew 9:27, but I didn't read the scripture. So it states, "It is appointed man once to die." In other words, man is to die only once. Well, I don't see how that refutes reincarnation, because when you are reincarnated, then you will die. And that reincarnation of you will die once. And then you can come back as a different reincarnation. You're not coming back as the same person every time, as in bodily form. And you always come back with this forgetting. Okay, so also here in the Old Testament, Elijah was supposed to come, and prominent scriptures teach that he must come to earth to prepare the way for the Lord. In fact, according to the common Jewish belief, Elijah was to come and to restore all things before any Messiah could appear. So in order for Jesus to have been the Messiah, this prophecy had to have come to fruition. And it seems that Jesus confirmed it when he said this in Matthew. Elijah was said that he would come again, and he would be the one who would prepare the way for the Messiah, for Jesus to come. And John the Baptist was the one who was screaming and yelling out in the desert about the Messiah. He was the one that baptized Jesus in the Jordan River and said, "This is the one whom I've been talking about." And that's when the dove came down on Jesus and God spoke, "This is my son, listen to him." This one person was talking about, he grew up attending traditional church services. It was never told, and he was never told about reincarnation either. And so this was a blog that I read about this dude who was also discovering that whole concept of the fact that reincarnation has been hidden from Christianity. So, you know, I know there's going to be a lot of people who hear me say that about reincarnation, and they're going to freak out, because reincarnation has been told to us that it is not a real thing, that it's sacrilegious to think of it as being a real thing. So if you start to feel upset about that, I've said this before, about anything, if you start to get fearful or upset about something that you're learning that causes cognitive dissonance, especially when we're talking about faith and religion and God, because so much of that has been ingrained in us, and it's a battle between salvation and not salvation. So like, if we believe something, does that mean we're going to go to hell? Okay, so apart from just the whole idea of whether or not hell is real or heaven is real or all of that, to create that kind of fear that would mean that we are separated from God for all eternity because of choices we make in this earth and things that we believe in this earth, when we're told that if we believe something that we will lose that salvation, we will be separated from God forever, it's scary. Okay, but we have a God that is not a God of fear. No, not at all. There's another scripture I read too that I just remembered, and it said that God does not require sacrifice. He does not require sacrifice. That's sacrifice in any other, like everything. So that puts it's in the scripture that he doesn't. And then our whole religion is based on the sacrifice of Jesus. So I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What does this mean? What does this mean? In just the last couple of weeks in church, we've been talking about how so many of the leaders in that time were lying, and they were just doing a show, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like exactly what's happening right now. Okay, it was just, and it's in scripture. And we sit there and we go, okay, tell me what to believe. It's like, no. Go to the scripture, go to God, learn it for yourself. So anyway, back to what this guy was saying. He had not been told, he said he'd never been told about reincarnation. It was certainly not in Bible studies. You would not be talking about it like I'm talking about it right now, and it's going to create all this anxiety in people who believe what they've been told by man, not by God. Because if you look at Scripture, it's very obvious that there was such a thing as reincarnation. Many people today, including some of the religious leaders, do not know that reincarnation was a common belief in the time of Christ. This is from another person. Like the last time I did my video, I talked about reincarnation, and I said this is really the only article that I found, and this was a blog, and he was coming from research that he had and giving information out. So even the disciples of Jesus accepted it. John chapter 9 makes this absolutely clear. In this incident, the disciples and Jesus passed a blind man, and on the side of the road, the disciples then asked Jesus if it was this man or his parents who had sinned to make him born blind. I'm going to just keep reading. The question revealed what they believed. For how can a man come into this world blind because of sin if he had not lived a previous life? What could that man have done before he was born to be born blind? Think about that. There's so much evidence, and we just brush over that stuff, and we only talk about the stuff that supports the narrative they want us to understand. I remember being in Bible studies, and I would find like a different answer to what was being said here, and I keep saying it, and they go, well, no, that's not the answer that we're wanting. It's like, wait a minute. God's speaking to me, and this is what he's saying. And they kept trying to re-ask the question. I kept coming up with the same answer. So we need to listen to ourselves and not be turned away from what we believe might be true by another person, unless that person can give us Scripture to support why they don't believe what we're saying. Like, for instance, and I've heard this a lot, and I've said this one before, but Jesus said to us that we will be and do greater things than he has done here. Okay? So when he talks about you, me, all of us, we will do greater things in him than Jesus is doing. He says, you see what I'm doing? You're going to do greater things than me. What does that mean? He's not talking about, you're going to tell everybody about me because, I'm going to be gone and I won't be telling people about me. Of course he could tell people about him. He's God, for goodness sakes. He could just go, boom, this is me. You know me now. It's not proselytization that he says is going to be what's greater. That's not greater. He was already telling people about God and everything. It's the things he was doing. He said, these things, you see what I'm doing? You will do better things, more exciting things. You'll be able to move mountains. These weren't metaphors. This was truth. And I was talking to someone about this in a Bible study, and they're like, oh, no. It's like, I'm not going to listen to what other people say. If my heart is telling me that this is what the truth is and this is what's being revealed to me, I'm going to believe that. Unless I get a pit in my stomach and anxiety about something, if I feel love and like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's the answer I've been looking for. That resonates with me. And we say that. We say resonating. I mean, that's not like an uncommon thing to say. And it's not an unchristian thing to say. So if something resonates with me, if somebody resonates with me, if somebody just is like in the same place with me, I get along with that person. If someone isn't, I don't get along with them. So this is a real thing. So if the truth resonates with me, if God has dropped something into my head, I'm not going to discount it anymore. And I don't think you should either. I think you need to pray and you need to see what is it God's telling you. So when you feel fear about something new that you're learning, you need to step back and examine why you're feeling that fear. Is it because someone else told you that that's wrong? I remember the days where I would do things and someone would say, oh, you need to do this. And I'm like, oh, that just doesn't feel right. It's like, but that's what you need to do. And then I do it. And then I felt terrible because that was not what I was supposed to do. All right. And I learned a lesson. That's okay. It's okay. We learn the lessons and we know that we've learned the lessons from them. Okay. That's important. So let me see. What else was there? Okay. So that I thought was really great. A really great, example. And the blog was pretty good. It's called www.thebible spiritofthescripture.com. And then this guy, I looked up reincarnation in the Bible, forgotten doctrines. So if you want to look that up, but you should look up yourself. Just keep looking, okay? Just keep looking, and you'll find things on both sides. You'll find what resonates with you. It's okay. We're not all on the same journey. It's okay to disagree, all right? We know that. I mean, the libs have been trying to make us agree with all of the things they think that we're supposed to be agreeing with. And no, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be searching for ourselves, working on ourselves, our spirit, our soul, our minds, and just evolving and learning and growing. That's the whole purpose of being here. And loving each other. Loving each other. Love is so profound. Love is the only thing that changes everything. Your whole life can change when you realize you need to love. And I really believe the moment that I gave myself to God, I just fell on my face. And if you look at some of my old videos, you'll find that testimony. But I came to a place of understanding that I really needed to know this God of love. And I wanted to know him so badly. My life changed in an instant. And I understood that love. And I started to feel love. Love for everything. I mean, I'd felt love before, but this was a different, deeper, more profound love. And this is something I believe that I needed to go through in my life. I needed to go through this whole, as a child, seeking God, knowing God was there. There was just like this innocent knowing of this truth. As soon as I heard about him, I knew that he was real. But then I had the time in my life where I turned my back on him because of all this fear and anger. Just didn't make sense. There was just this incredible discernment in me that knew that that was wrong, that everything I was learning was wrong. This was not the God that I knew in my heart existed. And then when I realized that I just wanted to know him for love, everything burst open for me. All of it made sense, and fear disappeared. And the more we grasp on to God's truth, the less we have fear in our lives, because we realize this life is not the beginning and end of all things. It's a small blip in the life of our spirit. It's just a small little blip. And I believe right now that those of us who are here chose to be here at this time because we are in the end times. And we say, God, I want to be there in the end. Let me be there in the end. And God said, okay, let's choose a body. I mean, we had that choice, and that's part of our free will, right? And there were certain things that we wanted to do when we were here. And when we don't stay in that pathway, he, says, okay, well, that's your free will. I mean, you've got all these different choices, but it just takes you longer to get there. It's like taking the meandering roads instead of just the straight road. But you do learn going on these meandering roads. Anyway, I keep going on all these tangents, I know. Hopefully this is an interesting conversation I'm having with myself. Okay, so I also looked up this guy, Oranges Adamus. He was born Adamantis. I'm going to probably have to put a link. He was born in 1980, or excuse me, he was born in C-185, probably in Alexandria, Egypt, and he died in C-254. So, this is in the AD period of time after Christ. And he wrote a synopsis. It's called the I wish I could pronounce things better. I'm so bad. Hexapla. It's Hexapla. Okay, what this is, it's a synopsis of the 6 versions of the Old Testament. Now, this is not something that a lot of people have seen. We don't hear about this. This guy wrote this, and it's called the Origenes of Hexaplorum. And it's a critical edition of the Hebrew Bible in 6 versions, 4 of them translated into Greek and preserved only in fragments. It was an immense and complex word-for-word comparison of the original Hebrew scriptures with the Greek translation, okay? So this is something I'd never heard of either. This man stated that reincarnation was believed by many of the most influential Christians. He stated the soul has neither a beginning nor an end. They come into this world strengthened by the victories or weakened by the defeats of their previous lives. Many centuries later, reincarnation was so widespread among the Christians that the Roman Emperor Justinian, which I mentioned before, took action that led to the banishment in the mid-century AD, or mid-6th century, mid-6th century AD. It's interesting that this was accomplished by a Roman emperor. At this time, the church was more of a state institution than an avenue of spirituality. And I imagine, this guy, of course, I'm reading what he said, and I imagine a belief in reincarnation probably wasn't in the best interest of an emperor who demanded total obedience of his subjects. Well, when I told you before about his wife was the one that really pushed this, because she wanted to be considered a god. And how could she be considered a god if people believed in reincarnation? Because it was such a widely held dogma. I mean, that's what they believed. So she had it all removed so that she could then be considered a god. Because if she were to be able to be reincarnated then again as a peasant or something, then how can they consider her a god if her spirit then would become a peasant later in a different life? So anyway, because of this effort of Justinian and many others, it didn't take long for this doctrine to be systematically removed from the Christian theology. And as you probably already know, most Christians didn't have access to the scriptures. In fact, at certain times in history, it wasn't just reincarnation that was banned. Reading the Bible was too. Now, that's the truth. What he's saying is true. So it really shouldn't surprise you that the idea of reincarnation didn't survive the divine will of the emperor and was only to resurface in the last few centuries, when more and more people were able to think critically about the scriptures and what they truly mean. Okay, so yeah, more about reincarnation because I can't help myself. This is something I think if you're struggling with it, pray. Okay, you don't need to sit there and believe in reincarnation. Doesn't make it a reality. It is a reality if it's a reality, right? But also believing in it doesn't take anything away from Christianity, who Jesus is, what Jesus did, who he is now. His spirit persists in everything, just as our spirits persist in everything. Jesus came, he showed us what life is supposed to be, what God is, who God is. It doesn't negate anything that happened. The fact that he died on the cross is not negated by the idea of reincarnation. So just, yeah, anyway. So I think I'm done with talking about that particular scripture. I was also looking at this book. This is another book by Melissa Redpill. I don't think I talked about this one before. I got this one after I got the Major Clues from Minor Prophets. Great books. She just takes scripture and she just shows what's happening now and how it relates to the end times and to what God said and what Jesus said was coming. Okay. This whole fall of the cabal. I love this. Joshua, the fall of the cabal chapter. You've got to love Joshua. No wonder so many parents named their sons Joshua. For 40 years in the desert, Joshua was Moses' faithful assistant. After the Israelites crossed the Red Sea and received the 10 Commandments, the people were supposed to go straight to the promised land, to Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. And Moses sent 12 spies to scope out the land. 10 spies came back shaking in their boots, afraid of the giants, and who lived in Canaan. But Joshua and her, I thought it was Caleb, but maybe that's another name for her, came back reporting that the land was wonderful and that they could defeat the people in Canaan. I love that positive attitude of faith. And that's what she was saying here. You know, the negative Nellies were just talking about how bad everything is, but they were full of faith. And so in that, when we sit back and we look at what's going on, you know, the Red Sea is being split right now. We see as people that are awake, just walking through this and knowing that God is walking us through this time. All right. We should have no fear. We know that God is in control. And when we turn around and the evil then starts to enter, God is going to destroy them in front of us. He's going to destroy them in front of us. We're not seeing it all right now. We are being protected by God. He is surrounding us with his wings. He's surrounding us with his glory. He's keeping us safe. And he is destroying them, but we will see it. We're going to see these tribunals, you guys. We're going to see them. I'm happy for those to happen and for us to know that these things happen. I'm not looking forward to seeing them. I am not looking forward to the revelation of the evil. I mean, this movie that came out, A Sound of Freedom, I have not seen it yet. I really want to see it. I want to get my husband to come see it with me. I have so many people that I've been talking to about human trafficking. Even to the point they're like, do you even know what trafficking is? I'm like, of course I. Can you believe that? It's like, you keep saying trafficking. Do you know what that really means? I'm like, of course I know what that means. Why would you think I don't? I mean, you think about that. It's just like the level of disrespect of people. Well, anyway, so I've been talking about how, these kids have been disappearing. Lots and lots and lots of kids. And people go, oh, well, but all the news tells us that most of these kids have been recovered. And I was like, no, they haven't. In reality, they have not. Because the media can hide that and then they believe it. Okay? So now it's funny because one person that I've been talking to about this, and then we've been starting to hear, like, for the last year or so, all of the trafficking that's been happening at the border. They've been revealing that, and then this person said to me, well, yeah, we keep hearing, about the stuff that's going on the border. I said, they're just letting you hear it now. Don't you understand? I've been telling you this has been happening. I've been telling you. And now all of a sudden it's just being revealed. Of course it is. I told you it was going to be revealed. Because they can't just reveal everything, because the deep state has had such a huge power hold over what can be told in the media. I said, of course, and then now The Sound of Freedom comes out, and I talked to this person again, and I'm like, this is the reality of what's going on, okay? This is a true story, and they're trying to tell everyone that this is, that Jim Ballard is really a pedophile, and it's not true. Oh my gosh, it's not true. And they're going to continue to lie and try to destroy this man, but I think what's happening is they're creating the narrative to show you how the deep state has been doing this for all this time. So they're not really, they're just showing the lies now. They're just showing the lies. And the people with this whole movie coming out are starting to get an idea about just how pervasive the human trafficking is. And I think our 17th letter of the alphabet has always said the children. They're going to stand up for the children. When they realize what's happening to the children, this will bring everybody together. Right? It doesn't matter who you are. I mean, if you're someone who hurts children and you go to prison, they have to separate you from the rest of the population, because the population's going to hurt you. They're going to kill you. They don't. Even criminals do not abide with people who hurt children. Right? So that is what's going to galvanize people. And that is being pushed out into the consciousness right now. And the EBS, according to 3 different people that I have listened to, they tried it. They tried to do it on around the 16th or so of July, and the deep state stopped it. And that was their last move. That was the last thing that they had power in. And by doing it, they relinquished that power to the white hats. And according to what I've heard from at least 2, maybe 3 sources, and then, like I said, they're not really sources, they're just people I've listened to who have different sources that they tell, this is what my source said, this is what my source said, blah, 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 blah. They all say the same thing, that yes, they did try to do it. Yes, it was stopped. And what happened is going to be amazing for humanity. When we start to get weary and we think about, oh my gosh, when's this going to happen? When's this going to happen? I just don't want to be alone in this anymore. I want people to be knowing what's going on. We just And then we start to think, is it really happening? Is it really going to happen? Is it ever going to happen? We just have to look back at a couple of years ago, the Georgia Guidestones getting knocked down, all these things happening that we know have happened would not have happened. Things that are being talked about would not be being talked about. You can find on YouTube right now many, many videos about SRA, and that is satanic ritual abuse. Can't say that out loud. SRA. These people weren't allowed to talk about it until just recently. And now they can talk about it, and it's on there, and people are saying what happened to them as children and how they were trafficked and how they were abused and how they witnessed horrendous things and how they had to participate in these horrendous things. And we're talking about kids like 11 years old, 6 years old, babies. And when this becomes common knowledge to the people, they are going to rise up and they are going to be fine with all the things that were kept from them, like from the White Hats, and why the White Hats did all of this in private. Because that's going to be a big thing, right? When they start to reveal things and they start to say, yeah, you've been watching a movie for the last couple of years and we had to do this, this, and this, and this, this is what was going on. And we've been, doing the tribunals. We've been doing it all. When they start telling people this, people are going to be mad. They're not going to like the idea, that they weren't part of the conversation. They could have been part of the conversation in that they could have been listening to people like you and me, but they weren't because they would only want to listen to the mainstream media. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for them to accept that things have happened behind closed doors. And not even necessarily closed doors. They do, honestly, all this stuff's out there. It's all out there. They just don't want to deal with it because it's so hard. So what can you do, right? You just, you do what you can and you say what you can, and they're going to accept it and they're not going to accept it. And when they start to get angry, you're going to say, there's going to be some I told you so's, but not in a way where you're trying to diminish and make them feel bad. It's more like, this is what I've been trying to tell you. This is what's been going on. It's okay, okay? I knew this was happening. I tried to tell you. And I know you're going to have to deal with this the same way I did. And you got a lot shorter time because now all the facts are out. So that's why we're here. We're here to learn more. We're here to be ready and strong because it's going to be very hard when all this starts to come out. And the people that have been asleep start to see how they've been deceived. I was very upset when I realized how deceived I was. And I get very upset when I see things going on. I'm just like, oh my gosh. This has been happening. This has been happening to people. And they've been poisoning us. They've been doing all these things and we've allowed it to happen. Because we just didn't want to see it. All right. And so these people from the last couple of years that aren't wanting to see it, even though so many people have been trying to put it in their faces, they're going to have a hard time accepting that they've really completely ignored the people that they love. So we have to be strong and we have to be full of love and compassion for these people. All right. I think I've talked long enough. I really don't know how long I've talked, but I'm sure it's been long enough because my throat's sore. Hey, I shouldn't be talking where my throat gets sore, but yeah. It happens sometimes. So anyway, thanks again for listening to me. Hopefully some of the stuff I've said is encouraging. Just remember, God's got this. This is happening, and it's going to happen really soon. And I know we keep saying that, but it is. It's going to happen really soon. So pray, meditate, just bring all the light to yourself so that you can push all that light out because God is all around us. Jesus is there to help us. We just got to push that love out to the people so that they don't have that fear. And we need to, when we find that fear in us, we need to just push it away and just let God work through us because that is why we're here. All right. Thank you again for coming and watching my video, and hopefully you have a wonderful day. Thanks. Bye.